Hello everyone, you are watching Global Horizons. I am Niranjan Marjani. I am extremely happy to announce the start of our special program, Conversation. In this very first episode of Conversation, we are going to talk about Bangladesh. Recently, Bangladesh entered into an agreement with China to develop the Mongla Port. What does this agreement mean? How would it impact South Asia? And what would be the consequences for the India-Bangladesh relations? To discuss all this, it is my pleasure and honor to welcome Professor Amit Dholakia to this first episode of Conversation. Professor Dholakia is head of the Political Science Department at the Maharaja Sayajirao University in Vadodara. Professor Dholakia, welcome to Global Horizons. It's a pleasure to have you on our show.
Thank you.
So if I may start by asking about this Mongla Port and the agreement between Bangladesh and China, how do you see it, and how would it impact South Asia in general and India in particular?
Thank you, Niranjan, for connecting with me for this particular conversation regarding impact of China-Bangladesh agreement on Mongla Port, on India and India's overall security and foreign policy objectives in South Asia. Uh, your question is very pertinent. As the viewers would know, in June, Bangladesh Prime Minister Tariq Rahman made a visit to Beijing, met the Chinese President Jinping, other officials, and he was also accompanied by his own large delegation uh, focused both on military and economic aspects of the China-Bangladesh relations. And one of the outcomes of this visit of Tariq Rahman to Bangladesh is an agreement between China and Bangladesh to develop Mongla Port and the infrastructure around Mongla Port. It's basically about developing a special economic zone uh, in the vicinity of the Mongla Port, and also enhancing the capability of the port in terms of handling of cargo and so on. Apparently, it looks like an innocent economic agreement. You see that a Chinese company will fundamentally construct. You see, I mean, purely looked at it from surface, it is an agreement of a civil engineering company of China with the Port Management and Infrastructure Development Authority of Bangladesh to construct certain facilities, certain buildings, certain infrastructure. And on top of it, China has also offered economic assistance to China, to Bangladesh, sorry, so that it does not have to immediately worry about the payment of this particular infrastructure project. So the agreement has also come with another agreement relating to the Chinese financial assistance to the Bangladesh government. Uh, but there is a larger and a deeper strategic implication of this agreement, particularly for India. But before we come to India, let us look at it from Bangladesh side and the Chinese side. It's a very win-win agreement when we analyze it from their perspective. China needed a secure foothold and access to the Bay of Bengal. As we know, Bangladesh is a major country which is important for handling of any long-term plan, strategic plan in the Bay of Bengal region for China. By extension, Bangladesh is also important for Chinese plans with respect to the Indian Ocean region and for access to Myanmar. And China needed this foothold in the Bay of Bengal region for very long. Without any direct access to Bay of Bengal region, China's plans with respect to Indo-Pacific region as well as for the larger maritime strategy in this region were constrained. So now China gets a foothold. It's an agreement that is similar to the agreement that it entered into with Sri Lankan government for Hambantota port. Earlier also for the Chittagong port, which is the largest port in Bangladesh. China has extended its existence. Mongla Port is the second largest port of Bangladesh. So for China, it offers it a very viable entry point and a secure entry point in Bay of Bengal. For Bangladesh also, it means that it will have a very strong bargaining chip and some leverage with China in future negotiations. But we are more worried from the perspective of India. Mongla Port, as we know, is located not more than 60 kilometers away from India's eastern borders, particularly what is called the chicken snack or the Siliguri corridor. And the Chinese presence very close to India's eastern borders, even as an economic entity. Of course, at present, there is absolutely no plan, Army, of developing a military base or placing any weapons or any kind of military infrastructure near this port. But say once the facility is developed, once the port is having Chinese participation and presence, it won't take very long to convert what we call an economic and a commercial usage of the port and the infrastructure into a strategic and a military usage in future, as and when both the countries decide so. So, and also there is one plan to develop an airport near the port, a commercial airport, but again the same airport can be used also for military purposes in future. So for India, it is worrisome in the sense that China's long-term plans with respect to making India's eastern borders vulnerable, I think that could get fortified as a result of Bangladesh and China agreement. Secondly, the security of Northeast India also to some extent gets overshadowed by this agreement. And thirdly, India's own connectivity projects with respect to Myanmar and larger Southeast Asian region. India had planned and it has actually started executing several connectivity projects with Southeast Asia, with Myanmar passing through Bangladesh. Now, there is also a kind of shadow and a question mark over those projects. So, from the perspective of India's security and foreign policy, it makes us worried with respect to this particular new, what I would say, an informal alliance that seems to be developing between Bangladesh and China. Over to you, Niranjan.
Oh, okay. So if we now talk about the political dispensation in Bangladesh, then it has been observed that whenever there is a government of Bangladesh National Party, BNP, India-Bangladesh relations have suffered. Currently also, Tariq Rahman is the Prime Minister who belongs to the BNP. And further, India is also giving asylum to Sheikh Hasina, former Prime Minister, who has been an opponent of the BNP. So do you think these factors will continue to cast a negative impact on India-Bangladesh relations?
Yes, domestic politics does matter as far as India-Bangladesh relations are concerned. Domestic politics of India as well as domestic politics of Bangladesh. I would say domestic politics mainly in West Bengal and not all over India, but definitely West Bengal's politics and Bangladesh's politics internal does have its deep impact on nature of India-Bangladesh relations. As we know, Awami League was the leader of Bangladesh's freedom struggle. Mujibur Rahman, Hasina Wajid, they have had deep connections with India. Even Hasina had personally also lived in India for very long, studied in India.
Yes.
So obviously, Hasina Wajid and Awami League share a different kind of a historical bond and at personal level, even emotional bond with India. And the nearly 15 years of Hasina Wajid's government and her regime in Bangladesh had consolidated India-Bangladesh relations. In fact, Bangladesh was the most reliable friend of India
Mm.
in South Asia when Hasina Wajid was ruling
Yes.
there. And India had also extended lot of support to her government in terms of extending lines of credit, in terms of giving financial assistance, in terms of various types of projects, Indian investments also in Bangladesh, and providing in Bangladesh an access to the Indian market. In fact, the trade had boomed between India and Bangladesh during the last 15 years. And India had actually put all her eggs in one basket, and that is Awami League and Hasina Wajid. Against that, of course, the other major national party of Bangladesh, that is BNP, Khaleda Zia, and now her son, Tariq Rahman. Though Tariq Rahman cannot be put in the same bracket as Khaleda Zia, because Khaleda Zia was more diehard and more kind of trenchant when it came to India, and because they had traditionally been against Mujibur Rahman, Awami League. Also, it has more support among the fundamentalist elements of Bangladesh than
Yes.
Awami League. Awami League is seen to be a more secular party as compared to the BNP, which has a somewhat Islamic fundamentalist support base. So Tariq Rahman, in a way, is also constrained by the legacy and the ideology of his party to prove his anti-India inclinations and to prove that I am not the same type of a government that Hasina Wajid's government was. So I am different. They actually carried out the campaign based on the argument that Hasina surrendered to India, Hasina compromised with Bangladesh's sovereignty and so on, and India was the major player in Bangladesh during her government. Now, to upset uh, that kind of an impression and to prove that we are more independent, we are not dependent upon India, Tariq Rahman is forced to adopt a different type of a stand. But let me also add here that having lived in UK and Western countries most of the times, having also been tutored by them and kind of mentored by them before the elections, Tariq Rahman knows that he cannot completely alienate India. And also, Bangladesh is surrounded on all the three sides by India. Its economy, its social and cultural linkages, everything are stronger with India than with China. So he's trying to play a balancing game, I must say that he's trying to hedge and he's trying to dispel the impression created during the Hasina regime that Bangladesh is in India's fold. So he's trying to do this balancing now by doing some business with China and at the same time waiting for India also to start its business with Bangladesh when the time comes.
Now, apart from this Mongla Port, Bangladesh is also involved in another project, and that is China-Myanmar-Bangladesh Economic Corridor. Uh, Again, I mean, what would be the economic and strategic implications of this project? And also, given the instability in Myanmar since the last 5 years, how much feasible or practical this project would be?
Important question because apart from India, Myanmar is another major neighbor of Bangladesh among the two neighbors. And for China, access to Myanmar is important for Southeast Asia, for larger design in that region, as also for taking forward its Belt and Road Initiative. So this China-Bangladesh-Myanmar corridor proposal is part of Belt and Road Initiative, which is, as we know, Jinping's major strategic
Yes.
grand design, I would say,
Hmm.
to create infrastructure, connectivity, roads, railways, ports, industries, everything in Asia, in Europe, and in Africa in such a manner that there are long term stakes in good relations with China. Now, uh, this is basically a 1,700 kilometers long connectivity project, which would help all the three countries. More so Bangladesh and Myanmar because a lot of infrastructure in terms of roads, railways, ports, and other infrastructure would get created. And both the countries, China and rather both the countries, Bangladesh and Myanmar, uh, would be able to have the benefit of Chinese technology and advanced level of Chinese infrastructure development in their own countries. But as you rightly said, Myanmar's political instability, the yet ambiguous stand of its military junta
Hmm.
is one thing that would create a certain question in the minds of the Chinese. Secondly, this project will not come without conditions. Uh, in Mongla Port, probably there are unwritten conditions, but definitely in this project, there will be written conditions that would overwhelmingly in favor of China, and that would bind both Bangladesh and Myanmar into certain kinds of long term security and economic commitments. Now, if both the countries are rational, they would see through this design and try to weigh whether they should compromise with their own sovereign choices while trying to get this infrastructure support from China, or they should rely upon other countries, including India or the Western countries, for achieving the similar objective. I think Tariq Rahman has a very difficult choice ahead of him when it comes to making the foreign policy because even Western countries are one player. I mean, it's not that India and China are the only two players. United States is also a big player, and I'm sure it is also watching these developments closely,
Yes.
and it will try to give its own advice to Tariq Rahman for making future foreign policy choices.
And finally, I would like to ask how should India respond to all these developments?
Yes, first we should be patient. Uh, Somewhere, I think we should also introspect. Say, I mean, as you are aware, this Mongla Port Development Agreement was actually first signed with India.
Yes.
India had committed that we would develop the port and its infrastructure and so on.
Right.
In fact, the contract was also awarded to Hiranandani Group of India. Fact is that we could not complete the project, and Bangladesh had to abandon the project as a breach of contract because we could not execute the project in time or as per the expected terms. Now, if we had already executed the project as per the expected terms and within the time frame specified, possibly this situation would not have arisen wherein Bangladesh is forced to go to China for achieving its port development objective. Secondly, I still feel that even if Bangladesh is using India card in its elections and for its domestic political objectives, India should, as far as possible, try to refrain from it. India means India's political parties and politicians when it comes to elections in West Bengal or in some other states where Bangladesh is a constant refrain. Now, obviously, this gives a different signal to the Bangladesh government and the population that no matter what we do, I mean, India is going to be unfriendly and they are going to look upon us mainly through religious or other kinds of lens. Now, these perceptions also somewhere end up building up foreign policy positions. So we should also be patient. We should try to actually not use Bangladesh card heavily in our elections. And thirdly, execute the projects that we have taken. Even now, there are so many ongoing projects of India in Bangladesh, and we should try to execute it as per the commercial terms that were entered into. And yes, we should give an invitation to Tariq Rahman to visit India as soon as possible and try to rebuild, because with Hasina Wazir not in the picture, uh, we have to deal with it. That's a reality. And compared to Jamaat-e-Islami, obviously he is a moderate leader, Western educated, Western mentored. Of course, the bone of contention is going to be the extradition of Hasina Wajed, and they want her to be returned to Bangladesh for court trial and all that. That's a major bone of contention. But I think India can also negotiate for it and ask for some kind of clemency and so on through international also efforts, so that she is not harassed or she is not tortured or persecuted by the present government in Bangladesh.
Well, we do hope that India continues to engage with Bangladesh, whichever political dispensation may be in power, and India remains patient and uh, execute projects so that we also have an advantage in South Asia and among our neighbors. Professor Dholakia, thank you for joining us and for sharing your insights on this issue.
Thank you. My pleasure.
We hope you like this episode of Conversation. You can tell us what you think in the comment section below, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel. You can also follow us on social media websites, the details of which are on your screen. Thank you for watching Global Horizons.